impressive members of the new government in Georgia. She has a very impressive CV, which I won't run through, but involving primarily a very long spell at the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, and she's also a member of the Free Democrats Party of Georgia. So Ms. Tsulukiani will talk to us for 10 or 15 minutes, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions. But please welcome the Justice Minister of Georgia.
Dear guests, I would like to have this speech before you in order to gain time, and after I'll be ready to take any questions that Mr. Deval would allow to take. I would like to begin by expressing my special thanks to Carnegie Endowment for Peace for providing me this opportunity to speak with you today. And I would like to thank Tom Deval as well for his efforts. Many experts, especially here in Washington at the Carnegie, often deliberate whether the current state of democracy and rule of law in Georgia warrants a rethink. The answer is affirmative. It certainly does, as new realities emerge in this country that need to be carefully weighed, assessed, and perhaps embraced. The identity of modern Georgia has been shaped through a complex interaction of continuity of change. And we can say in that respect that Georgia remains the same. But it's equally valid to say that Georgia is different now, as it has dramatically changed following the October election. And I know what I'm speaking about because I have been running in one of the most difficult districts of Tbilisi as a majoritarian candidate. Georgia remains the same as it comes to the path of Euro-Atlantic integration. Nothing has changed. So does our strategic partnership with the United States, which is based on the shared values, responsibilities, and commitments over democracy, rule of law, human rights, and maintaining international peace and security. Therefore, we and the new government of Georgia will never fail to express our appreciation to the US, to American people, for its continued support to democratic changes in Georgia, to Georgia's territorial integrity, and support to Georgian people in general. What's different? And you might have noticed the change already, both, I do hope, in tone and in substance. What's changed is the narrative on Georgia from the Georgian government offered to the outside world, offered to its own people. It's neither celebratory nor does it raise expectations that would simply fail reality check. Georgian people went through a huge disappointment in 2007, in 2008 and onwards, and I fully understand those people in this city who are living through the same period of disappointment towards the former government. Notwithstanding the difficult legacy we have inherited, and I have inherited as a Minister of Justice from the preceding government, no grace period has been requested from the civil society and the international community. We are open and candid in our commitments. Do what we say and try to say what we do. After having held a couple of visits in Washington, I did realize that I should have come earlier. Many bad stories have been told here in this city about the new government, but once I finish with my speech, you will realize that lots of things have needed to be done during those 100 days I have been in power at the Ministry of Justice. I had simply not had enough time. We have strong proponents of the very idea of Euro-Atlantic security. We believe the new government, it has to be built from the bottom up. In other words, Georgia's national security can only be realized within a broader Euro-Atlantic context, of course, but if it's founded onto human security for every individual, notwithstanding citizenship under its jurisdiction. And human security is inextricably linked with human rights, resting on 3 freedoms, amongst others. Freedom from fear. Believe me, please, Georgian people today does not live in fear. It has stopped on the 1st of October last year. Freedom from want and freedom to live in dignity. Challenges to these freedoms are as profound in Georgia as they are produced by the uneven quality of governance and shocking violation of human rights that pervade in many aspects of social and public life, especially, you remember, in the run-up to the October election. Our response to those challenges is systemic and entails consolidation of a unified and functional system of democracy that upholds the basic principles of accountability, transparency, and equality of everybody before the law. For this idea encapsulates well the underlying philosophy of ambitious legal reforms myself and the Ministry of Justice has embarked on. Few important points, I do think, bear reiteration. Firstly, new government's commitment to legal reform and democracy is not just to satisfy demands of international institutions or other external actors. Rather, it's based on the core values and principles that nurture the rule of law, justice, and human rights aspirations universal to all in the Euro-Atlantic family and of the people of Georgia among them. Secondly, the very essence of the ongoing changes in Georgia is that it's the public institutions that we are building, not just individuals that are driving and sustaining the legal reform process. I would like that the system, the legal system I'll be contributing for the creation will survive me and will survive any next Minister of Justice of Georgia. Public institutions that are open is our main goal, inclusive and transparent, hence trusted by our own citizens. As the Minister of the Justice of Georgia, I do believe it's important to share with you some elements of current legal reform. Indeed, it's in many ways a litmus test of how the new government performs. The process itself can be best described through the following catchwords: transparency, increased access to the legal system, legitimacy, and participatory approach to the reform of justice. But let me offer, first of all, some highlights. The team currently leading the Ministry of Justice of Georgia makes good case for being a transformational leadership which purports to steer the institution towards adopting a human rights-centered organizational culture that blends in the best of the both American and European experiences. I'm a graduate from ENA. I'm an ENARC graduate, and with 10 years of track record of working at the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. One of my deputies is a Harvard Law School graduate and adjunct professor at Columbia University running human rights projects. And the other 2 deputies are former defense lawyers graduated from different European and American schools. Let me walk you through some of the steps that we together, 5 of us, undertook to ensure greater openness of the Ministry of Justice for the public and civil society, transparency and access to the legal system and justice for individuals. First of all, the simplest one, the official law gazette, Matsne, electronic law resources are now free. You may not know that under the previous government, our citizens had not any hard copy of their own laws. They had only this electronic gazette, which was not free. No Georgian citizen would have free access to its own laws. Now I signed an ordinance, and believe me, it's the simplest thing to do in this world, to sign an ordinance by a minister. And this Matsne can offer now for free final versions of different codes and laws in general to our Georgian people. Avenues for the interested public and civil society experts to contribute to the drafting of laws. We are organizing, even before I present my own draft of a law before the Cabinet of Ministers, different rounds of consultations with the experts, civil society and international organizations, including EU, USAID, NDI, II, JLEP, or others. We are receiving feedback and taking into account their remarks, suggestions, which is, believe me, quite new for a Ministry of Justice, which has been kept completely closed and one of the most closed ministries under the previous government. My predecessor wouldn't even speak to a journalist. Participation in the working group is guaranteed for the civil society under the commission I do chair on criminal justice and also other interagency commissions that deal with separate aspects of criminal law and administration of justice. We are meeting with professional associations, defense lawyers, trade unions, businesses, being it AmCham or Georgian Federation of Businessmen, in order to work on different laws, including the new labor code. The very first reform, independent judiciary in Georgia. However, we are lucky enough to have 90% of our judges competent lawyers, but they are not independent. I freed them, and I can say it loudly, from my predecessors, and the prosecutor's pressure. Judges are today free in Georgia from prosecutor's office pressure, but it's not enough. We need good laws for our judges in order to make them able to reform the judiciary from inside. They are lacking now these good tools. That's why I was the author of a new law about the justice reform, which has been sent to the Venice Commission, and I'm very glad to know that the United States are a brand new member of that commission. We are waiting for their opinion in order to know what kind of improvements we can bring to that law. What will change? Today, the judiciary and ordinary judges, that's how we call them in order to differentiate them from the president judges who are the managers of the different courts. The ordinary judges don't have democracy within their profession. That's why the judiciary is heavily controlled by the leadership of the judiciary and is very influenceable from outside. The law I introduced in Parliament will be reforming, first of all, the High Council of Justice, which is the manager body for the judiciary. And my main goal is to depoliticize completely that body and to remove from there all the MPs, including the Georgian Dream representatives. My goal is not to have at the High Council of Justice presidential quotas and presidential nominees. However, my goal is also to protect for the judge members the majority within that body. They will remain in majority, however, judge members need to be elected democratically. Today they are elected by the Conference of Judges, which is the sort of General Assembly of the 230 judges of Georgia, but they are not allowed to vote in secret. The only person who can propose candidates is the President of the Supreme Court under the public open ballot. We will be giving any ordinary judge the right to say that he or she is willing to be to have a seat at the High Council of Justice and to be a candidate to election. The Supreme Court President will therefore see his own powers a bit limited, the reason for which he remains with my reform quite unhappy. But the ordinary judges do think that this reform is very well welcomed, and I asked different international organizations in Georgia to help me with meeting with them. In the midst of March, I'll be organizing, with the help of international organizations in Georgia, a meeting between the Minister of Justice of Georgia and the Georgian judges, so that I hear from them directly what's the best for them and what they do will to see implemented in our new drafts and laws. We are reforming also jury trial. As a European-made creature, in the beginning of my political career, I was not in favor of a jury trial system in Georgia because it's completely foreign to the Georgian legal system. But this system exists, and the United States of America helped a lot and invested a lot in that. I'm not there in order to abolish things which cost money and which cost human effort. I'm there to improve the existing institutions. That's why I proposed that the jury trial and jury's competence is widened in Georgia. That's why today any high-rank official from any government, including the former government, once it comes to the court, will have the choice to opt for the professional judge trial or a jury trial. I do hope that the high-rank officials from the previous government, if they come before a judge, will use this choice. We also have this huge challenge to deal with the past injustices. With my main prosecutor, we have been receiving since October up to 8,000 complaints concerning the high-rank officials from the previous government, including prosecutors of different level, saying that their rights have been violated by the representatives of the former government. We need to deal with all those complaints. However, the main emphasis goes to the evidence. That's why only 30 cases, criminal cases, have been opened until now against different representatives of the previous government. Other complaints need to be dealt with. That's why we imagine this solution, creation of a new commission, temporary commission, state commission for miscarriages of justice, so that no representative of the executive, no prosecutor, nobody else than an independent body can review all those cases which caused injustice under the previous government, according to these 8,000 victims. This law is under discussion, and when we meet with the judges in midst of March, we'll be discussing this draft with them as well, because any miscarriage of justice and reviewing a criminal case is first of all about a judge's past work, and we do need to hear from them what solutions can be found in order to for these errors to be corrected. We also reformed the Criminal Procedure Code, and I must admit that that's what I was proposing whilst being in opposition to my predecessor. Since I'm in the place of my predecessor, I would rather reform myself the Criminal Procedure Code. My main goal is to strengthen the defendant's position before judges. My predecessor, as a general prosecutor of the country, would like to have a stronger prosecutor before a judge, stronger than the defendant. However, he would sell the new Criminal Procedure Code, which has been very welcomed by every lawyer at that time in Georgia. He would rather prefer to have a weak defendant in order to be always right. But we do know that no prosecutor is always right. So we need to have a strong defendant, and the new law amendment to the Criminal Procedure Code will ensure the complete equality of arms before judges, and those high-rank officials from the former government who are now under prosecution, once they come to a judge, I would like to have them in a stronger position than other defendants used to be under the previous government. We are working very closely with the Bar Association. The Bar Association of Georgia under the previous government was, I can say it loudly, disliked. My predecessor would never hold any single meeting with them in order to discuss even the brand new Criminal Procedure Code, and one can just but admit that the Bar Association members are those who participate in justice, in making laws, etc. But they would not be consulted ever. This has changed, and we are negotiating, consulting with them once we have laws concerning their profession and justice in general. Likewise, the plea bargaining institute will be refined. In the past, it has been often portrayed as being an American implant into the Georgian legal system. That's how the former government sold it in Georgia. But in reality, it was merely used for coercion and extortion of money from those detained, thus discrediting American ideals and values. Today, on my ministry's account, I have 37 million laris, my predecessor gathered from my fellow citizens thanks to plea bargain just for last year. You know well, better than I do, that in America, plea bargain is not for extortion of money from citizens, and it's limited to petty crimes, or else is meant to not to allow overburdening of national courts. I do think that the American public has every right to ask whether the taxpayers' money is worth using to discredit American ideals and values. I think they do. They do have this right. And this is the change that we are now working to bring about, not a facade change, but upholding the very values and ideals that we do share with us in essence and in practice. This is how my government and my ministry views true partnership and friendship between our countries and people. We can commit that under the new Ministry of Justice, we would be accountable for each US taxpayers' penny, and how it's used to serve to promote American and European experiences in the field of criminal justice, amongst others. We still need renewed American support in this matter. I would never thank enough the Department of Justice here, which has been helping Georgia for years and years, and is now interested in continuing its help according to our new priorities. And this department had let me be a bit impartial because prosecutors understand better the prosecutors of another country. We have, from the Department of Justice, we have the most wonderful people in Georgia working with us. One of my deputies had been recently in the US, thanks to the DOJ, to explore the Californian model of the plea bargaining. He came back quite shocked. In America and in Georgia have the only thing in common, the name, nothing else. So the scope for plea bargaining would be narrowed here in Georgia down and limited to petty crimes. Negotiations and bargainings between prosecutor and victim and the defendant should be transparent. The US legal culture, believe me, has still a lot to offer, and we will take full advantage of the untapped resources. Another challenge ahead of us is the culture of impunity in prisons and in general in public service. We need to fight the culture of impunity, and I will just mention that I agreed to have the welcomed proposal from OEC ODIHR to monitor those trials which involve the high-rank officials from the former government, because credibility, integrity of the judicial process in those cases should be reinforced by international trial monitoring. And I do really hope, as a Minister of Justice of Georgia, that the ODIHR will conduct its monitoring without any outside political influence. Labor Code. You may have heard about our Georgian famous labor code in America. We worked on the labor code during those 100 days. And you know that the international community had long-standing concerns about that. We drafted amendments to it in close cooperation with the ILO and other institutions that would effectively rebalance relations between the employer and the employee. Now we have held several sets of consultations with different trade unions, American Chamber of Business, Federation of Georgian Businessmen and other employers, in order to have a text which would be a fruit of compromise. Since Saakashvili came to power, I began hating the word the very first time in Georgia. So I would not like to use it now because the former government wanted to show to the outside world that Georgia's history began just in 2003. But when it comes to the labor code, one can say frankly that it's the very first time in Georgia that the Ministry of Justice managed to have a text after having held negotiations with different stakeholders. This text is not liked by anybody. That's why I do consider that this is a good text. We are determined to remain very careful as far as corruption issues are concerned. As you know, the former government managed to eradicate completely corruption in Georgia on the lower levels, and the new government needs absolutely to remain prudent and careful so that some people in police and other law enforcement bodies do not, by chance, think that the change in government means something that would also change approach of the state towards corruption. Corruption on the lower levels will remain eradicated. However, it's not a secret that under the previous government, Georgia suffered elite corruption. The high-level officials under the previous government would even encourage high-level corruption, and several cases are under investigation today. This does not mean that we can remain happy about how better we are than the former government. We need a system so that no elite corruption is allowed in future in Georgia. And we are working within the frameworks of the Interagency Anti-Corruption Council, which is chaired by the Minister of Justice, with my colleagues from the Interior, the Penitentiary and other ministries, in order to create a system in terms of law and practice, so that all the instructions and recommendations from OECD and GRECO are as soon as possible satisfied. We are very seriously concerned about how human trafficking issues have not been tackled in Georgia yet. When you watch at figures given from the former government as a legacy, and when you talk with the prosecutors, you can just notice that those figures were not always sincere, unfortunately. That's why this year maybe our figures will not be far better than they used to be, but the approach has completely changed. We'll be reforming the law so that the prosecutors and investigators within the police are given broader leverages in order to have proactive approach and not to wait just in their offices when a human trafficking case can come to them. We are now thinking, and I personally asked for advice and cooperation at the DOJ if Georgia would need for next year's quick reaction force composed of the Ministry of Justice, Prosecutor's Office, and Ministry of the Interior in order to detect where in our country we do have places where the human trafficking can flourish without our knowledge. Proactive approach to combat human trafficking is for our next action plan, which has just been approved last week, is the main goal. We'll be working more actively about the problem that we call in Georgia our street children. In conclusion, and I'll be happy to answer your questions, let me underline again that while it may take time, it's clear that slowly but surely trust and accountability will take over the residues of the culture of impunity of government officials and elite corruption that have corroded public service before will be finished. We still have many things to do in this regard, but together with our friends, and especially strategic friends, I'm pretty sure that we can live up that challenge. May I thank you, everybody, different representatives of different institutions present here, and I do believe that there will be no love for any government, but the love towards Georgian people will remain in this city.